you are delivering on some stage somewhere in the world, as though these lines have never been heard before, are these. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner still wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? And I want you to somehow make a certain leap with me. I have one more quotation I want to give you. And this comes from Nietzsche. It comes from Thus Spake Zarathustra, I think. But it's been in my mind all week long. At some point, the man says, I stand before my highest mountain and before my longest journey, and therefore must I descend deeper than I have ever before descended. Now, there's several thousand things that one has got to say in the context that we're speaking, out of which we're speaking. And I suppose the first thing that I have to suggest is that one consider the fact that in the life of a man, the life of a woman, in anybody's life, there are several elements always at work. But the crucial element I want one to consider here is that element of a life which we consider to be an identity. The way in which one puts oneself together, the way one imagines oneself to be, the reality, for example, the invented reality, standing before you now, arbitrarily called Jimmy Baldwin, who contains a great many other things. We have agreed. We have succeeded in striking a certain kind of bargain with the world. This is his name, and this is what he does, and this is who he is. Okay, but that's not it. Beneath that, forever, for everybody, is something else. Is a stranger. The stranger with whom one is forced to deal day in and day out. Forced, in fact, to discover. Forced, in fact, to create, as distinct from invent. Life demands of everyone a certain kind of humility. The humility to be able to make the descent that Nietzsche was talking about. In my life, as I am sure in your life, when one is young, one supposes that there is some way to avoid disaster. If I can spell that out, I mean that when one is young, when I was a little boy, for example, I used to tell my mother, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. I'll be right, I'll be firing. I'm going to be this. And Mama would look at me and she would say, it's more than a notion. It took me a long time a very long time to begin to realize that she was right and begin to realize what she meant. I, like all of us, thought I knew what I wanted, and thought I knew who I was, and thought that I could do it, and we all do this. Whatever it was I wanted, wherever I wanted to go, I thought that I could do it without paying my dues. Because of all the things that one cannot imagine, especially when one's young, is how to pay your dues. You don't even know there are dues to be paid. And later on, one begins to discover, and with great pain, and very much against one's will, that if you want something, whatever it is you want, and whatever it is you want at bottom must be to become yourself. There is nothing else to want. Whatever that is, whatever that journey is, one's got to accept the fact that disaster is a condition under which you will make it. The journey, I mean, not make it in the American sense. And you learn a certain humility because the terms that you have invented, which you think describe and define you, inevitably collide with the facts of life. And when this collision occurs, and make no mistake, this is an absolutely inevitable collision. When this collision occurs, like two trains in a tunnel, one's got the choice, and it's a very narrow choice, of holding on to your definition of yourself, or saying, as the old folks used to say, and as everybody who wants to live has to say, yes, Lord, which means to say yes to life. Until you can do that, you're not become a man or a woman. Now, in this country, far of the dilemma, which could become a tragedy, of being what is known somewhat arbitrarily as an American. The collective effort until this moment and the collective delusion until this moment has been precisely my delusion when I was a little boy. That you could get what you wanted and become what you said you were going to be, painlessly. Furthermore, if one examines for a second, or one tries to define the proper noun, American, one will discover, first of all, that to be an American means a catalog of virtues. We have something called I Am an American Day, which I gather is meant to reassure everybody. And to be an American in these terms apparently means, check me out, you think about it. Apparently means that though Greeks, Armenians, Turks, Frenchmen, Englishmen, Scotch, Scotsmen, Italians, may be corrupt, sexual, unpredictable, lazy, evil, a little lower than the angels. We are not. Quite overlooking the fact that the country was settled by Englishmen, Scots, Germans, Turks, and Armenians, a little later to be sure. Every nation under heaven is here. And not, after all, for a very long time. I think that it might be useful, in order to survive our present crisis, to do what any individual does, is forced to do, to survive his crisis, which is to look back on his beginnings. The beginnings of this country, it seems to be, it's a banality to say it, but alas, it has to be said. The beginnings of this country have nothing whatever to do with the myth we have created about it. The country did not come about because a handful of people in Europe, various parts of Europe, said, I want to be free, and probably built a boat or a raft and crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Not at all. Not at all. In passing, let me remark that the word liberty, the word freedom, are terribly misused words. Liberty is a fact which is also used as a slogan. The people who settled the country, the people who came here for one reason, no matter how disguised. They came here because they thought it would be better here than where they were. That's why they came. And that's the only reason that they came. Anybody who was making it in England did not get on the Mayflower. This is important. It is important that one begin to recognize this, because part of the dilemma of this country is that it has managed to believe the myth it has created about its own past, which is another way of saying that it has entirely denied its past. And we all know, if we think about it, what happens to a person who was born, let us say, where I was born, in Harlem, and goes through the world pretending he was born in a certain place. However odd this may sound, also happens to a nation being, when it finally comes into existence, the achievement of the people who make it up. And the quality of the nation being absolutely at the mercy, defined, dictated by the nature and the quality of the people who make it up. In this extraordinary endeavor to create the country called America, a great many crimes were committed. And I want to make it absolutely clear, or as clear as I can make it, that I understand perfectly well that crime is universal and common. And I trust that no one will assume that I am indicting or accusing. I'm not any longer interested in the crime. People treat each other very badly, and always have, and very probably always will. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about denying what one does, which is a much more sinister matter. We did several things in order to conquer the country. There was, at the point we reached the shore, a group of people who had never heard of machines, or as far as I know, of money. I think we would call them now a backward nation. And we promptly eliminated them. We killed them. Well, people have done this for centuries, but I hazard, I'll bet you, as you say in Harlem, a fat man. There are not many American children being taught American history have any real sense of what that collision was like, or what we really did, how we really achieved the extermination of the Indian, or what that meant. And it is interesting to consider that very few social critics, none to my knowledge, but I say very few, have begun even to analyze the hidden reasons. The cowboy and Indian legend is still one of the most popular legends in American life, so popular that it still, in 1963, dominates the television screen. And I suppose, to finish off that particular item, or to close it for the moment, that all those cowboy and Indian stories are designed to reassure us that no crime was committed. We've made a legend out of a massacre. Now, slavery, like murder, is one of the oldest human institutions. So we cannot quarrel about the fact of slavery. That is to say, we could, but that's another story. But we enslaved him because in order to conquer the country, we had to have cheap labor. And the man who is now known as the American Negro, who is one of the oldest of American citizens, and the only one who never wanted to come here, did the dirty work. Without his presence, without that strong back, the American economy, the American nation would have had a vast amount of trouble creating its capital. It would be a very different country, and it would certainly be much poorer. And that's all right. But the people I'm speaking of settle the country. had a fatal flaw. They could see, they could recognize a man when they saw one. They knew he wasn't. I mean, you can tell. They knew he wasn't anything else but a man. But since they were Christian, and since they had already decided that they came here to establish a free country, and some of them really meant it, by the way, the only way to justify the role this chattel was playing in one's life was to say that he was not a man. Because if he wasn't a man, then no crime had been committed. That is the basis. That lie is the basis of our present trouble. Because that is an extremely complex lie. If on the one hand, one man cannot avoid recognizing another man, it is also true then, obviously, that the man, the black man, who was in captivity and treated like an animal and told that he was one, knew that he was a man and knew that something was wrong. When we got here, those of us who survived the Middle Passage, let me tell you a very small anecdote. I was in Dakar about a year ago in Senegal, and just off Dakar, there is a very small island called Gorée, which was once property of the Portuguese. And it's simply a rock with a fortress. It is the nearest, from Africa, the nearest point to America. On this island, my sister and I went to this island. They had something called the slave house. And we went there to visit it. And the house is not terribly large. Looks like a house you see in New Orleans. It's the truth. It's about 2 stories, courtyard, staircase on each side, stone staircase. And the bottom section, which is the first story, I assume that the captains and the slavers are upstairs. Downstairs are the slave quarters, which were, you walk through a kind of archway. On either side of you, very dark, very low, this is made of stone, were a series of cells on either side. Stone floor. In the wall. It seemed to me, this may be my imagination, but it seemed to me that I could still smell it. What it must have smelled like, with all those human beings chained together in such a place. And I remember they could not speak to each other because they didn't come from the same tribe. They say, in this corridor, there are the cells. They're straight ahead of you. You come into this archway, and straight ahead of you is a very much smaller doorway made of stone, which opens on the sea. You go to the edge of the door, and you look down, and at your feet are some black stones in the form of the Atlantic Ocean, bubbling up against you. And the day that I was there, that we were there, I tried, but it's impossible. Because the ocean is just the horizon. I tried to imagine what it must have felt like to find yourself chained and speechless, no serious sense of that word, on your way, where? It was the black man's necessity once he got here to accept the cross, because he had to survive. To somehow manage to outwit his Christian master, because what he faced when he got here was really the Bible and the gun. And that's all right, too. What is terrible in it is the fact that American white men are not prepared, first of all, to believe, for example, my version of this story, to believe that it happened. In order to avoid believing that, they have set up in themselves a fantastic system of evasion, denial, justification, which destroyed, or is about to destroy, their grasp of reality, which is another way of saying their moral sense. What I'm trying to say is crime is not the most important thing here. What makes our situation serious is that we have spent so many generations pretending that it did not happen. If you doubt me, ask yourself, on what assumption rests, on what assumption rest those extraordinary questions that white men ask. No matter how politely, on what assumption rests the question, what does the Negro want? This again comes out of some extraordinary preoccupation in the mind. Something entirely, if I may say so, divorced from reality. It's as unreal can be. Now let's go back for a minute to where I started. Let's go back to Nietzsche. I stand before my highest mountain and before my longest journey, and therefore must I descend deeper than I ever before descended. And we spoke a little earlier about the necessity, when the collision between your turn and life occurs, of saying yes to life. That's the descent. The difference between a boy and a man is that a boy imagines there is some way to get through life safely. And a man knows he's got to pay his dues. In this country, the entire nation has always assumed that I would pay their dues for them. What it means to be a Negro in this country is that you represent, you are the receptacle of, you are the vehicle of all the pain, disaster, sorrow, which white Americans think they can escape. This is what is meant, really what is meant, by keeping the Negro in its place. It is why white people, until today, are still astounded and offended if by some miscalculation they are forced to suspect that you are not happy in your place. This is absolutely true, and I'm not talking about the Deep South. People finally say to you, but you're so bitter.